All right. Awesome. I think we got everyone. I'm truly so excited for today's AMA. We're going to be inching closer to really bringing the comic space to one of and an amazing, never seen a release story into Web3. So really with that, I'm going to kick it over to Mark or Eric. If you can introduce our two legendary speakers today.
All right. Rich, can you hear me okay? Rich.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, Shirrel wasn't the only one with Discord issues. I was having Discord issues as well. Happy thought, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your day for us to kind of introduce for the second time the Slam Girl project, the Slam Girl drop. We have two of the main IP partners behind the project with us. We have Shirrel, Rhoades, and Will Meugniot. I'll let both these gentlemen introduce themselves, but first I'll introduce them. Shirrel is the former publisher of Marvel and is currently a director at Stanley Holdings, as well as the CEO of Scuzzle, if I'm not mistaken. Will Meugniot is along with Shirrel, is a comic legend. Will Meugniot is the co-creator of Slam Girl, and his discography is so large that I can't even introduce him properly, and would love for him to introduce himself. So without further ado, Shirrel, kick it off, and then introduce yourself, and then we'll go over to Will Meugniot.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Shirrel Rhoades. I was handpicked by Stan Lee to succeed him as the publisher of Marvel immediately after Stan. Stan and I worked together for a good period of time, and so I had a very good understanding of his vision of the future for comics, his aspirations for comics in the upcoming internet age, and then Stan and I kind of drifted apart as we both were kind of kicked out of the company, and he was kind of halfway brought back, and so it was only years later that I was asked by a friend of mine, an eccentric collector who had bought the assets of the studio that Stan created in Hollywood, to create webisodes for the internet. And I was asked to act as a curator and go through all of the creations, the superheroes that Stan had invented outside of Marvel. And they had been languishing away, sort of lost in ownership and just sitting there. And so I went in and started looking through them. And lo and behold, I came across a character called Slam Girl, and I'd never heard of her. And I've written 2 college textbooks on the comic book industry and the comic book superheroes, and I was just amazed to find this character that was a female millennial slacker who was kind of his answer to Peter Parker for the new millennia, and I was delighted because I felt like Indiana Jones discovering the Lost Ark. With that, I'll turn it over to Will, who I went back and dug him out of history, so to speak. Will had retired, living a happy life until I came along and said, "Hey, let's resurrect this. This was one of Stan's greatest creations that nobody knows about." And Will was the co-creator. Will worked with Stan, and Will was the one who developed Slam Girl with Stan. We don't have Stan with us anymore, but we have Will. So that's the real history.
Before we pass it off to Will, thank you for that, Shirrel. Very compelling, as always. I just want to, Clutch, are we recording this? I want to make sure that everyone on this here knows that we're recording this, and we're going to use the audio later on, potentially on YouTube and for other social reasons. But just want to make sure that Clutch is recording it before Will proceeds.
Yes, he is.
Okay, great. Will, take it off. Take it from here.
Well, now that you're recording it, I don't know if I can do this. I'm just kidding. But anyway.
Stage fright.
Yep. So anyway, just a quick look at my backstory for those of you who don't know who I am. In animation, I worked as a producer, director, writer, designer for about 35 years. And among the shows I produced were X-Men the Animated Series, The Real Ghostbusters, Exo Squad, Captain Planet, Gem, G.I. Joe. Basically, for a while in the 80s and 90s, if a character didn't have a tail, I worked on that show. And in comics, I first did comic books for Marvel in 1975. where I did the first 2 issues of the Tiger comic. And later in the 80s, I got involved with independent comics publishing. And I co-created the DN Agents and Crossfire, which were 2 of the longer-running independent books that were going on in the 80s. And lately, in my retirement, I've been creating my own comics and self-publishing them. And right now, I'm negotiating with Antarctic Press to start bringing my books into the comic shops. So this time next year, besides Slam Girl Comics through One Of and Shirrel, you'll be able to see some of the comics I've been working on for the last 3 or 4 years in your local comic shop. So that's kind of who I am. I knew Stan since 1981, and I worked with him through about 2001 off and on. And so we had a long and meaningful relationship, and I think I was one of the few people that Stan ever trusted to actually both write and draw for him. And we just had a good relationship. I really enjoyed my time with him.
Well, let me be the first member of the community to say that your resume is not that really impressive. No, just kidding. That's unbelievable that we're working with you on this project. It's fantastic that Shirrel was able to discover this. And Shirrel, you revealed to me, Mark, and everyone else, the community last AMA, that there's about 100, maybe even more than 100. Who knows? Maybe it's 300 today. Characters that you discovered. Is that accurate, or why don't you give a little bit of backstory about that process?
Well, Stan started this animation company right after Marvel changed hands. I worked at Marvel during what they called the Comic Wars. When I came into Marvel, it was owned by Ron Perlman, a big mogul who owns Revlon. It got taken over from him in a swift move by Carl Icahn, who's a big mogul who takes over companies like TWA and dismantles them. Perlman threw it into bankruptcy in order a poison pill to keep Icahn from getting it, and the bankruptcy court sold it to Toy Biz owner Ike Perlmutter because Toy Biz had a license to produce Marvel toys without paying a royalty, and they would have lost that under a new ownership under bankruptcy laws. So I was there through all of that area working with Stan. I came into the company, and Stan tapped me to take over as publisher from him, and he and I worked together. I think they fired Stan and I on the same day. So Stan went off to Hollywood and started this animation studio. I went off and did other things too. Worked for Reader's Digest and consulted with a lot of companies. I spent about 3 or 4 years consulting with DC Comics and Mad Magazine. And so they eventually lured Stan back on a part-time basis, but in the meantime, he had created all of these new characters for the web. And unfortunately, he created, he and Will can give you the details, he and Will created Slam Girl around August of 2000, and the dot-com bubble, as you know, burst around slightly after that, so the company went under in January of 2001. And with it, all of the characters and all of the things just fell into the legal system of ownership. And Slam Girl, even though a webisode was done for her and a backstory and characters and stuff like that, she never made an official appearance. And so when I discovered her and found Will, we said, let's take it and run with it. But in the meantime, looking through all the products that were created there, we've got over probably 100 different intellectual properties, if you want to call them that Stan and his team created that have just sort of languished. So we got lots of toys to play with.
Yeah, that's awesome. This project came to Mark and I from David, who's one of your partners from Immortals Group in this whole process. And when David and his partner John came to Mark and I and were like, "Hey, we have this IP," and he was giving me the backstory, I first said, "Holy crap!" And then when David and John walked away, I said to Mark, "I think this is I don't believe any of this crap." And then we went through this whole process with you guys for many months, many months meeting the team and seeing the original drawings that Will had created. And I was like, I can't believe that we have this IP. This is unbelievable. And sure enough, two of our co-founders are on right now. So I wanted to make sure that we shout them out. We have Josh James and Adam Fell online, and I'm not sure if Lynn is going to be joining us, but obviously we have this really big initiative that Lynn leaked one of our last calls that will be doing this drop around Comic-Con, which happens October 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th in New York. We are going to be doing the first drop for the Slam Girl collection on October 4th, which is a couple days before Comic-Con, and then we have a bunch of initiatives leading into Comic-Con. But I'm not sure if Josh or Adam want to say anything as it relates to OneOf's initiative in the comic space and just anything in general want to talk about.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is all about our distinguished guests and you guys, but, we're very, very excited for this project. Eric and Mark did amazing work to bring this to us, and we're just excited. This is the start. There's some more stuff coming in the comic space, but I don't want to take away from Slam Girl and the excitement around that today. So, just very, very excited.
Thanks, Josh. By the way, community, we're going to be opening up for questions too. So, as always, we're going to be opening up any questions you have for our Slam Girl partners, anything at all you want to talk about or comments, or just talk to Shirrel and Will, who are literally comic legends about anything comic related. I'm sure these gentlemen can answer it. Shirrel, Will, anything to add? Anything else you want to add or talk about?
Well, first of all, I was really glad when Shirrel got a hold of me about Slam Girl, because I always felt like it was unfinished business for me. Before the company folded, we'd shown the character around. We had interest in her for toys, TV, as a host on a book-selling site, and then suddenly, overnight, the company folded and it was over, and there was nothing we could do with this character that was already acquiring, second and third-party interest. In fact, one of the more fun things I talked about was I was friends with Danny Fingeroth, the famous Spider-Man writer, who at the time was doing a series for Showtime called World Girl, which some of you older people might remember now. And we were starting to see if we could work out the business for doing a crossover between Slam Girl and World Girl. And Danny came up with this terrific title for it, which I thought was wonderful for a science fiction series, When Girls Collide.
Danny Fingeroth is a old buddy of mine too, and even though Will and I had parallel careers, we didn't know each other. We knew of each other, but we didn't know each other until now. And we get together and we just geek out talking about all of our friends in common and people that we know in common, like Danny. And Danny wrote a wonderful book called, I think it's called Superheroes on the Couch, I believe, which is sort of psychoanalyzing the theory behind superheroes and what motivates them. And Will and I are a couple of aging fanboys. I mean, yeah, we worked in the industry. Yeah, we did some pretty neat stuff. But the fact is, we just love comics and superheroes.
Yeah, and the thing is, I was of an age where when Fantastic Four 1 came out, I was 9, about to turn 10. And so as I was growing up, that wonderful period in comics from 1961 to 1969, the comics grew up along with me. When I was 10 years old, there was the material for the 10 years old me, and when I was 18 years old, there was the material for the 18-year-old me. It was just a wonderful experience, and Stan was like the ringmaster of the whole thing. And I can't tell you how excited I was when I got a call from Marvel Productions one day asking me if I'd like to interview with Stan Lee about taking a job there as a storyboard artist. And from that, we became friends and collaborators. And again, it was a wonderful 20-year cycle in my life.
Excellent.
Ringmaster is a good description for Stan. Stan was a sort of an innocent genius. He didn't really even realize sometimes what he was creating. He used to say to me, I was just trying to get comic books out so I wouldn't lose my job. But he created a whole archetype of superheroes that resonated with people. But he had this great ability to be a huckster, to sell it, to become the face of Marvel, to become the leading voice of the superhero creation. And Stan could turn it on and off like a light switch. I remember once standing out at the San Diego Comic-Con talking with Stan and David Hasselhoff. Up came a camera crew, and even though Stan and David and I were talking just like we're talking now, quick as the lights came off the cameras, Stan went into, "Hiya, how are you? Good to see you." I mean, Stan lived and breathed comics and didn't even know he was doing it.
So let's touch on. So obviously, I don't want to get all like legal here, but there's a lot of companies out there that have various claims to Stan Lee properties, IP, name and likeness, movie right. I mean, I can only imagine how many different companies own pieces of Stan. So how is this property separate from maybe his affiliation with, I guess, Marvel, POW, even potentially Stan Lee estate? Like, how are you guys able to acquire this IP?
First of all, let me say that we're friends with Stan Lee Estate. We have a nice working relationship with them. Stan's work, I guess you could kind of divide into three ages, if you will, or three lumps. He had his long career with Marvel that was interrupted for a brief period there, and he created a lot of characters and creations for Marvel. And you've seen the movies, you've enjoyed them. With his animation studio, he created these characters that kind of got lost in the shuffle. And then he went on and joined another company that he wasn't very happy with in the long run called POW. And they worked with Genius Brands in terms of licensing later things with Stan and his name and likeness and stuff like that in a sort of a licensing sense. But these characters were created by Stan with his animation studio, and they were all work for hire, as typically is in the comic book industry. And when the company went under, it sort of languished there, and then along came this collector and bought the assets, and then he didn't quite know what to do with them, and he knew me and knew that I used to work with Marvel, and he said, "Shirrel, help me figure out what I've got, help me figure out what to do with them." And one of the first things I did was we got lawyers involved and did legal chains of titles, and no one has any real any call on these characters except us. So this is a different group of superheroes than he did at Marvel. It's a different group of superheroes than he did later for POW. These are the superheroes that Stan specifically created for cyberspace, as we used to call it back then. And these were the superheroes aimed at the emerging internet as an entertainment medium. So they're very separate, they're very different, they're very unique, and some of them are really interesting and some of them are so-so. Just like if you go to Marvel, we had characters that were really interesting and really so-so. And sometimes it depends on the telling. When I was at Marvel, I started a line called Marvel Knights, and I brought in a couple of creators, and I gave them 4 characters that were just languishing: Daredevil, the Inhumans, Black Panther, and I don't even remember the 4th one. But basically, we got Kevin Smith to do the comic first 8 issues of Daredevil, and that produced a movie and got Marvel back into the movie business, and you know that story. And we resurrected the Black Panther. And it took a little while, but you've seen the movie, and you know the movie that's coming out later this year. And all of that is sort of typical of the comic book world. There's characters that kind of languish and then get rediscovered and sort of polished off and get a whole new leash on life. And that's where Slam Girl is. She's got a whole new leash on life.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the timing couldn't be right. What Stan's vision in the past of what the internet would become and where his characters were lived. Maybe Stan is, Satoshi Nakamoto and he invented Bitcoin for all we know. All right, so let me talk about some of the specifics regarding the drop that, again, is coming out on October 4th, kind of the roadmap and where we go from here. The website, slamgirl.io, is live, so for those of you who are interested in the drop and want to learn more about it, go to slamgirl.io. Very robust roadmap. One of the things that David, John, Shirrel, Franklin, and Will came to us with was pretty much all these assets turnkey. I mean, we have a robust roadmap of assets, ideas that's going to easily last us for the next year. with this potentially ending up as a Web3 battle game between Slam Girl and her 8 villains. So we thought to start off the collection, we're going to sell basically four of Slam Girl's villains, 4 villains in the Slam Girl story on October 4th, and then maybe a month or a few weeks later, we start to figure it out. We're going to sell the remaining 4 villain battle cards as NFTs. We're also doing some exclusive NFT drops, which I'm not going to get into on the call. That's just exclusive for Comic-Con, for our initiative at Comic-Con. Again, this will all be published next week, to the masses, so you'll all see that. And what else can I talk about? Free NFTs. So next week we're launching a free Slam Girl NFT, which is going to be an ID page of Slam Girl where you get to learn some of her biographical information. You'll be able to download that. That'll kick off and start your collection. And of course, we also have something special that will be airdropping to our One Pass holders. So if you're not a One Pass holder now, it is still not too late, I don't think, to get it. You can still go get a One Pass, and you can get one of these free NFTs that, again, will be exclusive to One Pass holders. With that being said, Rich, am I missing anything? Clutch, am I missing anything? Mark? And then we'll just kind of open it up for questions because I know it's Friday and I do appreciate everyone being here.
I didn't say anything before when you introduced me, Eric, and I just wanted to say to Will and Shirrel, guys, it's an honor. It's really amazing to hear you tell these stories with Stan. I've worked for Quincy Jones for the last 15 years. I know many people have called Stan the Quincy Jones of the comic book industry, and I know Quincy would say that it's an honor that was said. Shirley, I heard you mention Mad Magazine. As you know, Quincy, of course, licensed the IP with Fox in 1995 to do Mad TV, did 14 seasons. This is something that is really a small world fun and a huge honor for us. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to speak today to our community. And again, hearing these stories and your time with Stan is just remarkable.
Well, our pleasure. We enjoy kind of reminiscing, and Will and I, when we get together, we just go back and forth reminding each other of do you remember when, and do you remember this guy and that guy, and do you remember this character? And the thing about superheroes and comic books is that they have a wonderful life that exists on their own. I believe that all of the editors that I managed when I was at Marvel, that they were kids ranging from maybe 20 years of age to maybe 45 years of age at the time. And each and every one of them, I think, thought that Spider-Man was real, the X-Men were real, Iron Man was real. They lived in this fantasy world, and it's fun to join that. It's fun to have something that sparks the imagination and makes you identify with them. And it's a true thing of good versus evil. It's one of those times in your life when you can see that some things are right and some things are wrong. And the other thing about superheroes is that they touch all of us. What they really remind us of is the hero within. That we like to think that, like Clark Kent, if we ripped our shirt open, you would find a superhero costume underneath, and that if we were faced with the right circumstance, that we would have the courage to step up and do what was right. That we would have the courage to be a superhero in our own right. Maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't, but that's something that we all aspire to. And superheroes resonate with all of us. And Slam Girl is a different kind of superhero and a fun take on superheroes. And what she really becomes very relevant for today's age, and Will can talk about this much more in detail, but basically she is a symbol of female empowerment. She's a young girl in her early 20s who is a slacker, who lives in her little messy apartment eating pizza and drinking beer, and her mother's calling her up saying, when are you going to get a job? At the same time, she lives up to that responsibility when she gets bitten by a radioactive beer can called Old Spider Bite Light. And so she is suddenly coming into her own with her own recognition of her own empowerment. And the storyline is extended out, and Will is a master of taking the the ideas that he and Stan developed and extending them into the future. And you're going to find that this female empowerment theme really resonates throughout the whole Slam Girl story and into the future. How all women can be Slam Girls, how they can all be empowered.
Yeah, and one of the things that I actually find interesting about Slam Girl is the way that Stan and I originally built her is that she's kind of a parody of Peter Parker, but also she reflects the emotion of a different age. Because somebody like Peter Parker actually thought maybe he could save the whole world, that maybe he could do something huge. And Slam Girl's motivation is a little different. She's accepted the responsibility of being a superhero. She knows she's not going to change the world. She's fighting to make today better, not the whole world all at once. And I think it really does differentiate her from the other heroes. She has a larger goal of always being good, but she knows there's a limitation to her powers.
Yeah, thanks for that. I want to shout out a few people down below. I want to shout out VV Vault. I think this is your first time in our community. I know about you. Thank you for being here. Hopefully you'll have some questions. I see Manchild down in the audience. I know Manchild asked the question that I didn't even understand last week, and Shirrel nailed it right on the head. So Manchild, I hope you have just as interesting of a question today. Without that being said, Mark, if you don't have anything to add, I'd love to start bringing up people to ask some questions. Again, I know it's the middle of the afternoon on Friday here.
Yeah, sure. I just want to sort of circle back a little bit when, we were sitting down to lunch with the team originally, and we were sort of discussing, we're like, is this real? Is this even possible that, something like this could even exist? You hear these stories. I've been a treasure hunter for most of my life. I still believe that there's a trove of treasure buried in my backyard somewhere. But I looked at this as one of those. I always look at, how are we going to be able to repeat this type of IP? And in my mind, it didn't have the ability for me to go out and find another one. So when we came back and realized that this was real and the right of Slam Girl was active and real here, there's very little I wouldn't do for it, or both Eric and I wouldn't do for it. So thank you, both Shirrel, the whole David, Franklin, Will, etc., for allowing us to sort of, attach our name as a company to this type of IP. It's in my mind, it becomes the gold standard of what comic IP should come out as, and it wouldn't be possible without you guys. So with that, let's open up to the floor.
Yep. This is also kind of historically a historical moment for One Of, in that we started off as a company focused on music, got into sports, or got into brands and then sports, or sports and then brands, and now we're introducing this comic vertical, which shows our diversification of our IP portfolio, but also shows that One Of continues to work with top quality IP that I think is unmatched in the NFT space. So with that being said, I won't sell it anymore, but let's open it up to any questions or comments for Shirrel and Will.
Awesome. I'll start pulling some people up. I think we almost need a AMA too in the future, if we can, of just hearing from Will and Shirrel of stories. And I know I would stay here for hours listening to it. So
yeah, the last,
pulling you up.
I was going to say that the last time Shirrel spoke, before this call, we were all joking around. I said it's the quietest Mark and I was ever on an AMA was when Shirrel was speaking. We just let him go because I was like, I didn't realize that Stan had got fired and Shirrel got fired and they created the company. I was like blown away by all these stories.
I think it was the quietest you've ever been, Eric.
This is good. Well said. Well, good point. Well said. You always get me, Mark. You always get me. Still owe me sushi. All right. So obviously we're going to open up to questions. We're doing this AMA today. We'll be doing another AMA on Tuesday, the 27th. On October 3rd, we'll be doing a Twitter Spaces. I'm not going to name who's going to be on that Twitter Spaces yet. It's either going to be on October 3rd or 4th. just know if you follow us on social media, as many of you do, you'll definitely get the notifications as to when we're going to be having other spaces. Because I learn something new every time I speak with Shirrel and Will. So I know that our audience is going to be learning something new every time as well. With that being said, let's bring up, okay, Manchild, there we go. Oh, this is going to be interesting. There we go.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hey, good to see you. Good to see or hear you again.
Yes, it is an honor once again to speak to you, sir, and Mr. Meugniot. How do I say your name properly?
Oh, well, it's Meugniot. I like
It's
to be
Meugniot.
like Mineo. When I was doing comics with my partner Mark Evanier, we used to bill ourselves as the most unpronounceable team in comics.
I have an unpronounceable last name as well, so I totally understand.
It's easy.
Yeah.
But
So thanks for letting me up, guys. I had a bunch of questions. The reality is that once I actually got to sit back and just think about Mr. Lee's, I guess you could say like the autumn of his life, I do remember there was a point in time, like right before, I think it was probably around Endgame, or was it a little bit before, maybe it was Infinity War. I do remember that he was trying to push a digital brand. It's kind of a couple questions, but was Slam Girl part of that brand that he was trying to bring into the cyberspace, and what was the name of it?
okay, now the entity that we did Slam Girl and a lot of the other developments Shirrel's talking about was called Stanley Media, and it was around from 1998 to the other trails of it into 2001, but really the core of the business was from 1999 to 2000. And so anything after that is another company. But this is the entity that did Seventh Portal, The Accuser, and we were busy developing TV shows, web animation, and things. And then, like so many things during the dot-com boom, I taken my first day of vacation. I got a call from one of the writers that was working on me, going, "Hey man, you better get in here. They're pulling the chairs out of the studio."
Okay, so I do remember him making a serious push, but okay, it's totally different. It might have been because I actually do kind of remember Slam Girl, and this was the second question I had. Because I remembered hearing the whole radioactive beer can thing. I thought, okay, that's actually kind of ridiculous. But he's known for doing ridiculous characters and it actually working out. So there was never a doubt, when Stanley creates something, it's never a doubt that it's going to actually tap into some kind of zeitgeist. Like, even if it doesn't work then, it'll work later. So my question is, how do you see the development of Slam Girl going the way of, say, I don't know if you're aware of this character called Gwenpool?
Yeah, I'm mildly aware of it. I have to be honest. I stopped following comics pretty much by around 2000, and so most of my information about characters like Gwenpool and stuff is from my Facebook friends and things.
Okay.
But I think the arc for Slam Girl is that it's going to be true to the Stan Lee spirit. And what Stan and I had talked about was the idea that the public was ready for a freshening of the superhero idea, that everything, even at that point, was getting very grim and gritty, dark and dirty. And we wanted to do Slam Girl as something that was a happy strip, where, yes, she has serious missions, but things are couched in humor. But as is the case with all of Stan's best work, there's action, there's humor, and most importantly, there's a sense of pathos about it, where even though there are parody elements in it, when Slam Girl has an adventure, there is an emotional stake for her and for the villains that she's confronting. But again, we're doing it with a lighter hand. You're not going to see Slam Girl tear anybody's head off or call anybody a cheap bastard or anything like that. It's a nice strip. It's something that you could show your mom, but will have some humor that you'll enjoy.
Okay. Thank you.
She may not call them cheap bastards, but her nemesis, the villains of the piece, are the League of Evil Bastards.
I love that name. So the reason I ask about Gwenpool, this is my last question. I don't want to be selfish. Is Gwenpool? She breaks the fourth dimension, right? So I was wondering if Slam Girl would connect to us in that vein, where she's, coming out of the actual comic book to speak to the readers and the viewers, like She-Hulk, who's, hitting right now, or like Gwenpool or Deadpool or something like that.
Yeah, well, as I see her right now, I think in a special circumstance she might. It would be a singularity done in a specific story, like watching She-Hulk. They beat that dog to death. I think.
Yeah,
I think there's
definitely.
not any more gain in that.
Right.
Well, Slam Girl has been known to wink at you, the reader, from time to time, or the viewer.
Yeah, but I think it's. I think it's that she bends the fourth wall rather than breaking it.
Yes, I think that's a good way to put it. And I published Deadpool back in the day, and I was the first one to give Deadpool his own comic book with the title on it. And Deadpool was a fun way to play with superheroes and sort of a smart ass type of approach. But the trick with any superhero is to give them their own personality and their own reason for being. Because if at Marvel, we had 7,000 different intellectual properties that were mostly superheroes. At DC, we had 7,000 that were mostly superheroes. And you add in all the other comic book companies that we know of, there's just a sea of superheroes out there. How do you differentiate yours from all the rest of them? The ones that stand out, the ones that have become breakout characters, the Spider-Man of the world, the Iron Man, they all have something that are unique about them. They're just not a Me Too. And I think you're going to find Slam Girl fits into that very well. She's her own girl.
Manchild, I think I asked last time, are you based in New York City?
Yes, I am based in New York, born and raised.
So are you planning, because both Will and Shirrel will be in New York with the majority of our team, will you be coming to Comic-Con, or do you want to go to Comic-Con?
Yeah, I definitely want to go. I just came back from the Comic-Con in Chicago, and I wasn't able to find tickets. I don't like buying tickets from spam. I mean, I want to say, unconscionable resellers. I don't like giving them money.
Scalpers.
So, scalpers, thank you. I'm like driving to pick up my son right now. So I have not been able to find the ticket for Saturday. But I definitely do want to go, and I will be in the area because I have to meet Jonathan Hickman and old buddy Stephen Wacker.
Are you able to make, I guess, Thursday and Friday as well, or just the weekend you were looking for?
Yeah, Friday. Yes, because Saturday's normally like the biggest day, but Friday I could definitely show up.
Okay, so I'll DM you after this, and we'll try to figure out a way to get you passes to the show. Okay.
Cool. Appreciate it.
Now, Manchild, could I ask you a question?
You can ask me anything, sir. You've been nothing but forthcoming.
Well, let's say you're about to pick up your kid, and let's say you stopped at the comic shop on your way home. What are the 2 comic books you'd pick up this week?
Oh, well, I have I have subscriptions, so I actually get I buy like $1,000 worth of comics a month.
Okay, so let's say what are your top 2 on your pull list?
Top of my pull list right now, I would have to go with the Avengers X-Men Eternals story, the Judgment Day and Last Judgment and all of that. And what can I go without on top? I would say maybe. It's kind of hard. because the
Well, that
three world, three moon thing that's going on Substack has my attention the most with Jonathan Hickman and stuff. But the other comic I would guess that I would automatically ask about would be an indie. God, it's escaping me the name because I'm driving, but I think it's called Department of Truth.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be at a Comic-Con. I'm going to take your recommendations.
Okay.
Now I got one for you. If your shop carries Antarctic press stuff, 2 weeks ago there was a new issue of Planet Comics. I think it's issue 10 that has a cover by me that I was pretty happy with.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But, Antarctic doesn't have the best distribution in the world, but a big shop might have their stuff.
But bring it by and he'll sign it for you.
Oh, thanks. Okay.
Of course.
Well, I'll definitely do that because I pick up around the first week of the month. But because I spent so much money in C2E2, I told the guys, give me a break, and I'll pick up in the top of October. I have been so busy, I haven't been able to read. I'm probably like 6 months behind.
Manchild, you were our target audience at Marvel. You were what we called a Marvel zombie. Anybody that spends that kind of money. Yep.
Yeah, I'm a savant. I literally played the role playing games when I was a kid. I would sit on my stoop and they would look at me like I was crazy, but I was so passionate about it. They would actually protect me to make sure that I had the space to imagine and stuff. And it really did well with me creating like in music and stuff like that. So, it's just the thing that stayed with me throughout my life, and that my kids, my kids are not as well. My youngest that I'm going to pick up, he's a Spider-Man encyclopedia. Since he was like 7, like he knows stuff like he could talk to any one of you guys for hours and hold it. But he got to meet Dan Slott. We got to be on the Marvel Method episode.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, you're clearly part of our world.
I think go ahead, Manchild. Sorry.
No, I'm listening.
No, I think from my perspective, where I didn't grow up like that, but hearing how much it's changed and carried on from generation to generation, and seeing these IPs to sort of develop within time. So an example of this would be Slam Girl. Slam Girl couldn't come out because of the the bubble bust, what happened earlier. But now she's sort of coming out at a time when Web3 is sort of catching fire, right? Where two Web3 projects are sort of make a lot of sense right now. So I think timing is everything, right? And with timing comes sort of the feeling of there's a little bit of something for everyone. So Child, Slam Girl, One of, Will, Shirrel, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that there's just a universal feeling of like, now is our time. So even hearing, you guys chat about all of this now, it's really sort of resonating, and I've been really quiet and just sort of soaking it in. But that being said, Manchild, I look forward to seeing you in New York, and I don't know if your son will be there, but I would look forward to seeing him as well.
Yeah, he'll definitely be there. He would not let me live going to any kind of con, and he wasn't there. Like that would.
With your permission, we'd love to shoot some social content with you and your son for our socials, and potentially our partners would also promote it. But there's 3 or 4 hands up, so I want to get the rest up. Manchild, really appreciate it. I'll hit you in the DMs.
Cool. Thank you guys for everything.
I'm not sure how much you're into like the Web3 space or NFT space.
I'm in there. I'm learning.
Okay, good. Well, what you'll learn is that like the top 20 or 30 collections that I've been tracking, in terms of like just like overall trading volume, those top 20 or 30 collections are typically all based on like original IP. And
Right.
that's what we're providing here is literally original IP. You have the creators on here with us right now, and we're hoping for big things out of the project. So thanks for being a part of the community.
I have some original IP for you guys that I want to talk to you about that you're already invested in too. So we have a lot to discuss. We have a lot to discuss, and I'm really proud of you guys for the way that you have taken care of Biggie and his estate, and the care that you're showing these content providers. That's why I'm messing with you guys, and I really want to be down, and I want to really help be a voice and focus in with you guys.
Well, that comes from our co-founders on down, where we're artist-driven first, right? Artist first, creative first. But thank you. Let's bring up Rich. Let's bring up the next. I see 1, 2, 3 hands down there. So let's end it on. Let's get those 3 individuals up. If there's any more questions, please raise your hand now, because I want to close the room out after this, so everyone can go enjoy their Friday.
Thank you again, Manchow.
Thanks, Manchow. Birdman pulling you up.
There's the real Birdman in front of my house every day. He's like feeding the bird. There's like 1 million birds, or I don't know. This guy feeds them seeds, or I don't know what he does. There's like 1,000 birds around this guy. Anyway,
I feed him squirrel. I feed the squirrels peanuts, but
peanuts.
At any rate, can you hear me better today than yesterday? Do I sound better today?
Not really. Not really.
Birdman, but
all right, I'm using the PC. From now on, I'll do these through my phone. But I just want to thank Will and Shirrel again for taking the time out. I'm totally pumped. I got away from comics when I was a kid growing up, and I lived for comics and collecting. I actually, I'm not sure back, but I've got a few Mad magazines dating back to 67, 68 that my dad passed down from me. Not the best condition, but I really enjoyed reading them. I'll probably pull them out 'cause it's a good while.
I've got the complete set of Mad magazine in the beginning when it was still a comic book.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'm 46, so, these were still 10 years before I was born, and, I still had a... What's that?
I just said, don't impress me bragging about being 46. I heard pieces falling off me as we're talking.
You're still a kid to me.
Year-old though, So we'll call it even on that. Your mind far exceeds the imagination of mine, clearly. But you mentioned Kevin Smith and also Stan Lee, and the question I had was, have you done anything or worked at all with Legion M? And I asked that, I only know because Kevin Smith is part of it, and my understanding was that Stan Lee was getting involved with Legion M as well, towards the end of, towards the end there.
I haven't, but Stan was friends with Kevin Smith. He appeared in Mallrats, and Kevin is a big comic book geek. He owns the comic book shop down in Red Bank, I think it is, New Jersey, and he if you look at a lot of his movies, the particularly Chasing Amy, pure comic book. I went to see that movie with the chairman of Marvel Entertainment, and we sat there and giggled our butts off when everybody showed up in the beginning of the movie at a comic book convention wearing Marvel Sucks T-shirts. And so yeah, Stan was good friends with Kevin Smith. Goodness knows what they might have got in together if they had better opportunity to do that, and things hadn't got so crazy in Stan's life as he got older.
But that being said, do you have any intentions or any ideas of maybe picking up where he left off with that relationship. And I'm an investor in Legion M, and I think it's an entertainment company created by crowdsourcing, and so I was just.
We haven't had any conversations. I mean, we would certainly be open to that. We right now we're kind of focusing on how we get Stan Lee's legacy back in the forefront with these NFT collections that we're putting together, and some of the characters that he created that have been sort of lost to history.
Wow. Well, I'm totally excited. I don't think any more time. Slam Girl is going to be awesome. Hopefully I can make it up to Comic-Con. I believe I got an invite, I won't say, from another project I'm in, but anything to get me up there. I'm down in Florida, so anything that.
I lived in Key West for over 20 years, so I've been there, done that. And but if you do make it up to the Comic-Con, Will and I will be visible there. So make sure you come around and say hi.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time, both of you. Everybody, thanks for your time.
Nice meeting
Thanks,
you,
Birdman.
Thank you.
Go feed the birds, Birdman. Next up.
Rava pulling you up. While we're waiting for Rava, X in the chat had asked, Will or Shirrel, are you able to talk a little bit broader about Stanleyville Metaverse? He heard a little bit of it while at Dubai Metacon, and the concept is really great to kind of paint a picture of where the franchise could go in the future.
Well, I can't say too much about it, but I was a speaker at the Metaverse in Dubai, not physically, but teleported over there by electrons, and was up on the big board, and it was kind of like being in the Metaverse right there, where I was physically sitting back here in the States, but I was also right there in the exhibit hall in Dubai talking to people. So that's kind of where we're going, I think, with the Metaverse. As Will can tell you, Stan Lee, for the most part, he set his superheroes in real places. While over at D.C., we had towns or cities like Metropolis and Gotham City. Stan put most of his characters in New York City and real places. I used to live up in South Salem, New York, and Salem up there was where the X-Men's Academy was, and Stan used to say to me, wanted people to feel like if they were sitting in their office in New York City and glanced out the window, that they could imagine Spider-Man swinging right by. But with Slam Girl, he took a different tack. He put her in a little town called Stanleyville, California. And as you know, Stan Lee's real name was Stanley Martin Lieber. And so Stanleyville was kind of the real departure for Stan, creating a fictitious place. And we like to believe that Stanleyville, California is somewhere in the metaverse. It may be in the world that you live in. It may be in a parallel world. We're not sure. But it's a portal that could allow people to go through the metaverse and find different worlds, different experiences, experience alternate reality, a virtual reality, what have you, and also a place that we can link it all together as we roll out one by one some of these other characters that we have that Stan created that are still in our back pocket. And they have stories to tell, and they've got wonderful backstories and histories and adventures. And so Stanleyville is kind of the connective tissue as we see it, and that we have in our distant future the idea that Stanleyville is going to be our portal to the metaverse.
Oh, you got something to answer, man?
No, I was going to say that. No, feel free, Will, to chime in.
Well, I thought since we're at that point where our questioners have vanished, I'm going to share a story ostensibly with Shirrel that I've never told him, and it's the first time I met Stan Lee.
Wait, hold on one second, Clutch. You recording this? All right, go ahead, Will.
Okay, well, this is one of those stories that's a little bit sad and a little bit funny. Back in 1975, 76. I'd gotten a call from Tony Isabella about how they had found my samples in the Marvel slush pile, and among them I had pages of Tigra. And they decided to give Tigra her own book, and I was the only person that submitted pages to them who had thought to submit Tigra. And the fact that I drew women well, I got a cold call from Tony and John Romita asking me if I'd like to do Tigra. And so I, of course, go, yeah. And so they go, okay, we'll have a script to you in a couple of weeks. And so I'm going to stick this in, even though it's not the Stan story. So I had to wait 6 months before that script came. And I thought I was going crazy. Did I actually talk to them? It was just that typical thing where they were so busy they forgot they were doing a Tigra book. And so that summer, went to Comic-Con, and Stan was there, and I'd gotten kind of a mixed reception at Marvel, where there were people who really liked my stuff, that understood I was intentionally doing stuff that was different, and there were people who thought if it didn't look like John Romita, it wasn't any good to them. And so my future was going to be decided at that con, and so I was just kind of running around. I was scared to talk to anybody because I didn't know what was going on and all that. And so my wife, who is like 5'8", but then had hair down to just above her butt, and was wearing like a nice little California summer outfit. And I got in an elevator, and there's Stan Lee. And Stan's attention, of course, is riveted on my wife. And I thought, well, I've got his attention now. Maybe I can talk to Stan and find out what's going on with my Tigra assignment. And I go, Mr. Lee? And he goes, yes. I go, I've started working for Marvel, and I'm doing this book for you called Tigra. And Stan just looked at me and goes, Tigra? Is that one of ours? And bolted the elevator. And so in the later years, there were a couple of times when Stan and I were having serious disputes over things, as you do, like when you're both creative and you both want your way. And I'd throw that up at him, and he was so good-natured about it, and we just always had fun. But it was an icebreaker, a tension breaker, when things got a little too dark between us.
So, Will, is the moral of the story to have a very cute wife?
Well, I hate to say it, but a lot of my success in both comics and animation was based on the fact that I could draw pretty women, and there's nothing better than having a model in the house when you're stuck with drawing something different. Because I used to kind of laugh, like when I was living in Sherman Oaks, we were neighbors with Dave Stevens and Brink Stevens, where we just lived down the street from each other. And Dave and I were friends from Hanna-Barbera, and we used to go out to dinner and stuff. I just always thought it was funny because Dave brought Betty Page, and I bought Rainbow from the DNA Agents. Because we were just living on photo reference.
So we have.
Will, I just have one question. Slam Girl, is that one of ours?
I believe it is.
No, it's one of ours.
If you don't want it, I'll take it.
By the way, there's a pun in there with one of. Anyways, all right. So Ravenga, let's pull him or her up, and we'll end on that. Before we Rich, let's pull that. Yeah, okay, cool. Ravenga, before you go on, so like I said, slamgirl.io is live right now, where you can see the roadmap, see kind of like what we're releasing. The one of marketplace, the free NFT claim page will be up next week. On the 20th, we're shooting for the 27th on Tuesday, so everyone please stay tuned for that. We'll also be making some other announcements next week as it relates to the Slam Girl collection, as well as other collections that we're doing in the comic space. With that being said, hit it off, Ravenga.
Ravenga's got a muted mic.
There we go. Sorry about that. How you doing, Will and Cheryl? Thank you. I love listening to you guys talk. I just want to touch on the comics. I know that for Stan Lee, they were an escape for him, and like I know for most of us that are interested in comics, I know at the time Stan Lee was made fun of because like he would retreat to this fantasy world, and then you know, they do say, you know, nice guys finish last. Well, nice guys finish first because, you know, decades later, Stan Lee has like this empire based off these comics he wrote when people used to think his fantasies were like, you know, juvenile or contrite, which he gave us this great series of, I mean, not just the comics, but the movies alone, you know, for people that don't read comics. So I want to touch base on that because I can connect with that, you know, on that level. And then my question is, I guess for it's Cheryl, right?
Yeah.
My question for you is, if you were behind the creation for Deadpool, right, which is like he's so anti-hero, which doesn't make him a hero, he's just anti-hero, right, with Marvel. What made you decide to shift gears and go with Slam Girl, which was how Mr. Will had put it, a person that was limited to their honorable abilities?
Well, I didn't create Deadpool. I just gave Deadpool his own comic book title because I thought that the character was deserving. Look, I've always loved a great variety of characters, and at Marvel we had some characters that were funny. We had some characters that were terrific. We had some characters that were you know, real heroes. We had some characters. I was part of the Thunderbolts who started off to be superheroes, and then we revealed that they were actually supervillains. And so we like to give our readers surprises. We like to give our readers variety, and everybody doesn't love the same thing. The reason that I decided to go with Slam Girl is because I thought it was a brilliant creation that nobody had ever heard of. I thought that you know, I jokingly started off this conversation by saying that I felt like Indiana Jones discovering the Lost Ark. How many times in your life do you discover, you know, like the lost novel of Ernest Hemingway? And so when you come across something like that, you just got to stand back in awe and say the world needs to share this.
Right. No, yeah, I agree. Then, yeah, also, I know, you had asked a question, someone previously, like, off top of their head, what comics they'd go off of.
Yeah,
and, like, I haven't really gone to a comic book store in a while, to be honest with you. Like, I've been to Barnes and Nobles, and, like, in the last couple of years, I got into, like, the graphic novels section. So, like, for me, if you were to ask me that question just off top, it would have to be something off DC Black Label. Now, I have, like, the 3 Jokers, and I believe the first one, which was the Batman one. I have those 2, but the one I had my eye on is the one where they're introducing Harley. So it's a DC Black Label. I know it's not connected with Marvel, but those are that would be my first go-to.
Well, remember, I consulted with DC, too, so I've worked both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, and also, it's important to remember, Slam Girl is its own thing. It's not connected with DC or Marvel, except by the history that Shirrel and I have been involved with the different companies in different ways.
Correct. And Will, you mentioned you also work with Hanna-Barbera, which I know was a very awesome collection. I mean, I saw some of those cartoons when I was younger. You guys, I know you're probably holding back some goodies. I know you guys created Slam Girl. Is there like, not potential, but is there like better stuff in the works that you guys are like excited to bring out later on?
Well,
you'll be surprised by what we've got.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think better. I think there's one property in particular that right before the company folded, I'd actually had Fox Kids trying to get as a show that Stan and I had developed, and it's a much more anime influenced thing. One of the things people don't know about Stan is that Stan had gone to Japan in the late 70s and hung out with Gene Pelk, who was like the Marvel guy there. In fact, if you see the live-action Spider-Man. Spider-Man's car is named GP7, and that's in honor of Gene Pelk, who kept Marvel alive in Japan for decades all by himself. But anyway, similarly, about 6 months after Stan had been to Japan, I was working at Marvel Productions, and I mentioned to Lee Gunther, the guy that ran the company, that I was going to Japan on vacation, and he phoned up Gene Pelk in Japan and asked Gene to show me around the studios. And so I got taken around Toy to see the animation department. They gave us passes to the Golden Week, kids festival movies and things, and it was really a great time. But when I got back, Stan and I had both seen a show called Sun Vulcan, and it was one of the first what would become the Sentai shows. It was different in the sense that it only had 3 characters. They had a giant robot, but not, the characters were color coordinated, but it was more important. One of them was a shark, one of them was a hawk, that kind of thing. Beautifully designed show. And they were also doing the first of the Space Sheriff shows, Galvin. And we were both so enthused about it that for years we tried talking Marvel into giving us the money to do a dub of it, both a straight dub and a comedy dub, like people later did with, I think it was Denzi Man. And Marvel just wasn't interested in him. But Stan was a fan. He got it. When we were talking, he was so excited about it. And so when we developed this anime-style show, he was all in on it.
Well, just as a sidebar to that, when I was at Marvel, I went over to Japan, and we had licensed our characters over in Japan to create manga. And I was impressed with what I saw, and so I brought the Japanese manga versions of Spider-Man and all the characters back to America, and I launched Marvel Manga. We were ahead of the curve. It was too soon. It didn't do well, but I brought it back to America because I thought there was some amazing stuff being done.
Now, do you remember that cover of I think it was the 3rd or 4th issue, where it's this beautiful painting of Spider-Man, and he's just standing there in front of like a granite wall or a tombstone, and he's holding a rose, and the petals are falling off the rose. That was so stunning and impressive at that moment. If you get a chance, try looking up Spider-Man manga, and if you see that cover, you'll know what I'm talking about from just the description. It's just a beautiful pose of him, and it was so evocative. And it was something Spider-Man hadn't really had since Ditko had left back in the 60s, that sense of, depression and nobility coexisting. Again, I loved it, and I love that you guys brought it out in the States.
Well, what was ironic about it, you would have thought that it would have been a inexpensive product because we were just repurposing already done art. But of course, manga reads from back to front, and so we had to reverse everything in the book to put it into American style, and then we had to translate everything from the Japanese, and so it was quite a project actually to bring it back.
Yeah, so first of all, Shirrel, I want to thank you guys for spending your Friday afternoon with us. We're going on a little over an hour. We like to keep things under an hour. There's so much we haven't even really scratched the surface about this collection. We'll be getting into a lot more details regarding the NFT collection next week, and I think I speak for everyone at One Of that this conversation is really compelling in that typically when we're doing these AMAs, a lot of it is just focused on the economics of the drop, the utility behind the drop, the price of the drop, when it's coming out. But here we're really getting like behind the scenes backstories. Even Will told us a story about meeting Stan Lee for the first time that is news to us. This type of stuff is awesome, and as a fan, I appreciate it. Separating myself even from One Of, this is just awesome stories to hear and very compelling.
Well, next time I'll tell you about my first meeting with Stan Lee, and this has been fun. And so, hey, gang, all of you out there, let's do this again.
There we go. Let's do it again on Tuesday. Rich will let everyone know the time. Will, hopefully you can join us. It was awesome to have you. Shirrel, your AMA from last week is one of the most talked about AMAs in One Of history, and I hope that this AMA supersedes that. With that being said, I hope you all enjoy, everyone listening, enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend, and we'll catch up with you guys on the flip side. So take care, everyone. Thanks, Rich and Clutch. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone, for joining. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Shirrel.
Of course.
Have a great weekend.